Hello, and welcome to episode 28 of the Poisons and Pestilence podcast, a movie review special on Fallout with Gwyn, Winfield. I really hope you enjoy the show today.
Hey Brett, thanks for sort of allowing me to be on the show. Long time listener, first time caller, as they like to say. And I think, fundamentally, the complete collapse of society due to a nuclear holocaust actually inevitably will bring in quite a lot of poisons and pestilence, and we can have a chat about that as we go through. In terms of myself, I'm the editor of Seabrainy World. So the magazine's been in existence for nearly 20 years. We're in our 19th year now of print. We actually still produce a hard copy magazine, which makes me feel very much in touch with the time period of the show. But prior to that, I did another magazine called NBC International, which the name kind of gives it away. And then sort of prior to that, I was a defense journalist. But weirdly enough, my introduction to the whole concept of CBRN came via my masters, which I did in Liverpool up with Dr. David Seed, because we studied the science fiction apocalypse and Holocaust. So weirdly enough, I think that I've almost sort of come full circle in this, from studying the texts to be able to get an academic grade, to studying the text to be able to come on the show and talk about it hopefully intelligently.
Oh, fantastic. I must admit, the sci-fi thing is a bit of a surprise for me, in the sense that I think I've struggled for years doing my PhD to actually watch anything related to the topic I was looking at. I'm not quite sure psychologically where that comes from. But as time's gone on, I've realised that there's so many different interesting dimensions and different folk that touch on these subjects that actually it can be quite rewarding to do. And so I'm really pleased you've agreed to come and talk about Fallout. Now, that's, again, as we're talking about aging ourselves, I don't think I ever played Fallout on the computer. I was a Call of Duty type. And so I've been very much catching up on that, which seems to be a very committed subculture of gamers. But the series itself, even as a newcomer, someone such as me, has not disappointed. I've had an excellent time, and perhaps not surprising. So one of the directors was involved with Westworld, which I also very much enjoyed. And today we're going to talk about it, and I'm very excited.
Hello there. I'm here to show you a wonderful place. A veritable Camelot of the nuclear age. Not made by God Almighty, but the working man.
You can be a hero by purchasing a residence in a Vault-Tec vault today. Because if the worst should happen tomorrow, the world is going to need you to build a better day after.
So where do you think we should start?
Well, I'm not going to be able to do this sort of game crossover piece because, again, I'm a bit old for this, and weirdly enough, while you say that you're sort of Call of Duty, I'm sort of far slower in terms of things like Baldur's Gate. So, I find myself jumping when I should be shooting. However, my son played it, and weirdly enough, I got dragged into it in the way that you do when you sort of walk past one of your sort of kids sort of playing it through the music that they had, and I think that this sort of follows over into the TV series as well. But pistol packing mama and things like that out of the sort of and again, I'll get which episode of the Fallout game entirely wrong, but it was like you suddenly poke your head back around the room and go, did he actually just sing about a pistol packing mama? And go, oh yeah. So I've sort of sat down and sort of watched bits of sort of the Fallout the game. So yeah, I think in terms of the game to TV from my sort of little experience of it seems to do it quite well. And I think we can perhaps sort of come on to it a little bit later, but there's certainly, I think that there's sort of the two plot devices that go through the series, one of which is that, jumping, shooting, and sort of, getting your dog to bite people in the face part. And then there's the sort of more plot-driven sort of norms, sort of narrative thread, if you like, that's perhaps more of a sort of political sort of subculture. So I think the two of them kind of sit well together. I think that people will, depending on their personal tastes, have more interest in one rather than the other. But as a sort of a whole series, I think it all kind of works together.
And there's some fantastic characters in it. I mean, so you start in the vaults. You also follow the life of Cooper. Lucy, I thought, was an excellent character that was developed throughout. Maximus, I've got a soft spot for, and I do want one of those suits, obviously. I think everyone does. The ghoulish character that emerges later in the series, as you kind of find out what he's about and his backstory in more detail. A necrotic post-human, I think, is probably the PC term for describing it rather than ghoul, is excellent. I also like the kind of vault politics. Now, that was in two senses. One was, of course, when we see the war break out, you see the shooting at the vault door, but then the vault politics of these societies that have emerged over hundreds of years in isolation from the world, who are there to survive, and the very distinctive kind of social organizations they've developed. And it's all fascinating. So there's lots to go on. Let's maybe start a little bit with the depiction of radiation and of nuclear fallout, because of course that's very prominent in the work, and you're probably better placed than me on the nuclear side to talk through a little bit about what it tries to depict, or what it does depict, and what it's kind of hyped up, and what it has used creative license to generate interesting storylines.
That's a good way of looking at it. I think that it gets a certain amount of sort of lip service paid to it. It's a narrative character almost that drives the action. There's that, I think it's either episode 2 or episode 3, where she's suddenly looking at that sort of delicious puddle of water and finally sort of relents and takes a sip and gets a little bit poorly. But thankfully Maximus is there, either that same episode or the next episode, there to be able to give her the rad away and make everything better. So again, it becomes a plot device, but what it misses is that, what does she drink for the rest of the time? So she sort of managed to have a little bit of sort of puddle water and feels bad, but then a sort of touch of the magic sponge and she's well on the way. And it misses the fact that everybody else living in the that sort of nuclear sort of desolate landscape is going to be having to drink exactly that same water and mainly dying in droves. So I think that's again, it's a nice way to be able to drive certain parts of the narrative. But I don't think if they have got a sort of radiation advisor on the show, I don't think they listen very much. No,
I think that's probably fair. Yeah, so you've got the radiation aspect, and the interaction of that with organisms is very interesting. So on the one hand, of course, you have the ghouls, and these are individuals who have had long-term exposure to radiation. And so in this world, long-term exposure to radiation gives you a kind of half-life, in the sense that you're seemingly immortal, but you wander around looking like a remicrowaved corpse the entire time. And so, of course, that is part of the reason that Cooper is in such a state, that and the burning and the burying, which was a very intense backstory the whole way round. In addition to that, we, of course, have a real throwback, actually, to like the 1980s, in the sense of the kind of biological mutants, which appear sporadically throughout the series. I assume from the games, these were big things you could shoot. And then, of course, the fact that individuals seemingly as well, there's this advanced technology which has enabled, when available, the treatment of radiation in very effective ways and to reverse effects. But also seemingly the ghouls and those sorts of things they can do very strange zombie type things by reattaching limbs, and there's also various kits to give you special feet and those sorts of things. And so there's a whole kind of world of technology which has emerged there as well.
Well, I especially like the sort of the gulpers, because I think there's the suggestion that I think it was Vault 4 has, through their work on sort of the impact of radiation on DNA, which apparently they managed to turn into a wholly far more exciting field of science than the actual one is, where you have fingers for teeth. I mean, what scientists look to that one yet done? I don't need to tweak this anymore. What do those fingers do? Not really sure. There are a lot of them. There's a lot of bones in that mouth. It seems over-engineered for something you don't know what it's going to do. You can shut up with that negativity. It has weird fingers for teeth.
Exactly right.
And if it ever vomits, it dies. So
it's probably true.
So
at least it doesn't need to put his hand over his mouth. So that's important.
Also true. And apparently there's enough of them that nobody actually goes, what the flip is that? They go, oh, it's a gulper. It's a particularly big one. Obviously.
It's got a name. It's fine. It's legit. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah. There's probably sort of the scary book of things out there that some miracle printing press is still churning out to allow people to educate themselves on what's going to inexpertly eat you in the nuclear wasteland.
I've recently been to Harry Potter World because I'm a parent of a certain age, and I had a great time. The one thing that struck me there was they had a lot of animatronics, which I was not expecting. I expected it all to be CGI, but the earlier films, a lot of it was done by little robots, basically. Very complex, lots of wires. I'm sure someone had a lot of fun putting them together. But of course, the sad thing about this means that the Gulper does not get cast credit because it is a CGI being. We could have, I'm sure, would have had a fantastic individual who could have claimed to have been the Gulper for that entire series, but alas, someone is out of work because of that. The depiction of the sort of nuclear wasteland is pretty harrowing, and I guess we can talk a little bit about some of the themes that are touched upon in. One thing that's particularly striking, of course, is with the advance of CGI and those types of things, the depiction of the nuclear blast, which was done in kind of panorama, so you weren't kind of close up when you saw it happen, was huge. I mean, the scene of the nuclear detonation is pretty powerful and stays with you.
You mean the one right at the start, or the one
right at the start?
There's the one where Maximus miraculously gets out of the fridge, a la Indiana Jones, and suffers zero acute radiation syndromes from it.
This is a recurring theme in the show. There is a whole world of super strength plastics, metals, and those types of things, which seemingly, in a film setting, take on magical qualities, which I very much enjoy.
Yeah, well, it's super convenient. But I say the fact that there's recently apparently been an atomic explosion, or maybe even sort of, I don't know whether they might well be on the hydrogen bomb, because the whole sort of timeline is rather sort of confused. But yeah, he just sort of gets out. It's not hot. It's at the background levels of radiation aren't sort of eye melting, and he's absolutely copacetic.
No, that's the timeline thing is interesting. So it threw me initially because the aesthetic is very 1950s, like a futuristic version of the 50s. And much of the technology, for example, like the things on their wrists, have like LCD screens and stuff. They're very kind of retro futuristic. And I think that some of the timelines are implied, but supposedly the Great War happened I think 2070 or 22. Yeah, I think about 2070 or something. But yeah, it threw me initially. I couldn't quite place what era it was supposed to be in, which I think was quite clever.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think it takes again a sort of lot of that aesthetic sort of from the game, and it's certainly kind of got that the Jetsons meets 50s Americana.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Jetsons is exactly right. The other thing that, in addition to the kind of 1950s vibe that completely threw me and had me in stitches, was the completely unexpected turn up of Matt Berry's voice and Matt Berry more generally in that show. Casting Matt Berry as this kind of mad experimental robot, for me, won awards. The the voice was completely out of place, and yet it made complete sense. I imagine that the alternative for that would have been someone like Stephen Fry. I mean, kudos for getting Matt Berry involved and allowing him to be Matt Berry. I mean, I enjoyed that a lot.
I love Matt Berry, and I love sort of Toast to London. I was thinking this morning before I went on, I'm going to try and fail this sort of the Matt Berry sort of accent. But in the episode of Toast, he goes, "Fire the nuclear weapons."
Yes, exactly right. So we've had a bit of a negotiation with some of the guests because, I say negotiation, basically told me it's okay, don't worry about it, because we basically allowed zombies in. And now zombies are in, as is the case in real life, regardless of whether or not there was a chemical, biological, or radiological dimension to it. It seems that now it is accepted that this can be part of the CB law. And so I mentioned this because this may allow me to do what they do what we do in the shadows, which is another Matt Berry fantastic series. So let's talk a little bit about this nuclear apocalypse theme that we see and have seen for decades in obviously an endless stream of films. Though, of course, only a handful of films I think are truly iconic. Threads, of course, as compared to the way nuclear detonations are depicted in Fallout, is a much more gritty kind of thing, which I think stuck with people. And so how do you think this fits in or speaks back to some of the previous nuclear apocalypse type films we've seen over the years?
I think it's absolutely symptomatic of how writers, certainly anybody who's trying to have, quote unquote, a main character, tries to be able to deal with the nuclear holocaust. So when you look at something like Threads, there is no character development because characters go downhill really badly, kind of, in line with their health situation. So the only way that they can almost sort of make a sort of an interesting story out of it without it just being absolutely harrowing is to be able to set it enough time into the future to be able to sort of get all that sort of unpleasantness, like nuclear winter, complete collapse of the sort of global food system, immediate sort of mutations within sort of prenatal sort of women that's just going to wipe out the whole sort of next generation. All the stuff the Threads looked at, let's just put that into the horrible past. Things happened, we didn't like it, and sort of fast forward to again, like they do in this, sort of 200 years in the future. And that allows them then to be able to have this this sort of period, sort of wandering around the nuclear wilderness, explaining things to people like, there's a puddle of radiation over there, as if it's just a bottle of pop that's been thrown from a car. So I think it sort of very much sort of fits in that, and it also I think fits into that sort of 1950s aesthetic that they sort of promote. That
yes,
it's like they never really go into a great deal of detail in who, what we might want to call Red Force is. We kind of assume it's the Russians, but we don't really know. We seem to be living in a bipolar kind of balance of power, nuclear arsenal. So, the whole idea of China having the bomb or sort of Israel, for example, never really sort of comes into it. It's a very sort of lightly sketched out clear scenario. And again, the fact that much like the Radaway, that they apparently have suits that can quote unquote block radiation, but they don't feel the need to zip them all the way up.
No.
Never. Let's not worry about sort of closures. So
it's a nod towards nuclear protection. You put the suit on, you're asserting your dominance, aren't you? You say, "Look, I'm wearing it. I could do a zip up. Don't need to."
Yeah, you're scaring the radiation off. Don't even bother coming.
Exactly right. Yeah, don't bother. I could zip it up at any time I wanted.
But the other thing that I love is that all of the what I call the NPCs, certainly the people who live out in the wilderness, they're all pretty buff.
Yes.
They all look like they've got a sort of all right, their sort of skincare and hair care regime might need a little bit of work. It is the post-apocalypse after all. But bro, do you bench? Because
exactly right.
There's nobody that looks like they've missed a meal or seven, and have perhaps got thyroid problems.
I suppose there's not a lot going on. So, I mean, what are you going to do? You bench press, don't you? I mean, you fire something, you lift it up. You lift up a nuclear waste can because for some reason there's nuclear waste cans all over the place, seemingly collected around urban areas. I'm not quite sure why they're so prevalent, but I think that, again, might maybe a relic from the game. The other thing that was interesting to talk about, what you skip over is you often hear about people talking about, nuclear apocalypse bringing in a new dark age. But of course, more was happening in the dark ages. I imagine the 100 or so years after is not really historical. You would struggle to write history because there's nothing really happening. It's just sustenance. It's just rotting away. And there's people just wandering around trying to survive. I thought the depiction of the ghouls was particularly interesting. The ghoul character was very good because, again, it's this idea of the Wild West, that aesthetics there, isn't it? And the cowboys and the kind of a lawless world.
I was going to say, there's a sort of a great sort of whole 1950s, again, it fits into the aesthetic of this, of these sort of space cowboys, sort of people like Spurs Jackson and his space vigilantes, who just sort of rode around on their horse and went, "Whoa, Neddy, there's a little bit of radiation over there." Well, they just threw atomic bombs at each other. So again, there were, during this sort of period, there were so many sort of mashups of bringing different narratives together to hopefully sort of refresh them, or more likely sort of cash in on what was going on in the cinema and quote unquote make it relevant. So I think that there's a lot of stuff that's in sort of Fallout that is, very much aligned with some of the older sort of nuclear narratives, but also then some of the sort of more modern ones as well. Because again, that sort of issue of mutations, extreme mutations, as you say, doesn't really come in until I suppose the special effects budget soars, and we start to understand DNA a lot better. So again, what Fallout's done is taken a whole load of the quote unquote classic, almost sort of golden age of comics narratives, and sort of mashed it up to some of the more CGI effect monsters.
Of course, the other interesting thing was the depiction of the scientist. There is the guy that loses his head, in a sense. I mean, in many ways, he was a very calm survivalist. He did quite well. He had a nice dog. But this was another kind of subplot of the importance of the information that was injected into his head because he decided he wanted to keep his dog, which had been, again, this speaks of a backstory of this whole genetic engineering program that was apparently going on before the end of days. So I thought that was quite an interesting character as well. I mean, that had a World War II feel in how that depicted those experimentations and those sorts of things that were going on.
Was it just me that saw that automated turret shoot at him and wonder if it's that bad a shot, why have they spent so much money on it? I mean, they'd spray his bullets at him, none of them hit him, and he just sort of, and he's a scientist. It's not Usain Bolt. And he just kind of ambles out there. So, dude, somebody needs to do some work on that.
Yeah, questions were asked there. The other thing that I guess to talk about is the politics of the whole area. So I did like this idea of the vaults and these vault communities. Obviously, Lucy, the main character, you get her eye view of the kind of expectations in that society. And as you'd expect, and I guess this does speak to the Dark Ages, the rise of myths and these strange sects, and the way she was depicted as this kind of naive, protected individual that had been in the vaults, and she wouldn't survive for 5 minutes out in the Badlands, as it were. I thought that was really interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think that there was a certain amount of hoax at the quote-unquote liberal leftist elites when they're required to sort of live in a vault. Yeah, they're all about sort of peace and love and sitting down and talking about feelings. It was funny enough as a sort of plot device. I kind of felt that it was a bit unfair considering they've managed to survive for 200 years and not eaten each other. But I mean, a lot of it was again, it comes down to the problems of when you have a complete societal collapse. You've got characters wearing glasses. I mean, who's training these people to make glasses? Where are all these skills coming from? that sort of, where does all the clean water come from? Where's all the carbon for the filters and all these other things? The complete destruction. I mean, all right, we've got fusion power, so we'll just go with that. I can sort of live with that. But I mean, the fertilizer for the plants, the sort of the other nutrients that they're going to need in their diet. Where's all the raw materials for that coming from? But that is by far the sort of the far duller logistic issues. But I mean, again, I don't know how you felt, but I mean, I was far more interested in Norm, and I'd be surprised if that wasn't a sort of a physics joke right there for sort of normally occurring radioactive material. As soon as they said his name was Norm, and go, like the little weedy Norm. But yeah, I was sort of far more interested in that as almost sort of a political thing. Is Vault 32? Is that the breeder vault? That we just sort of focused on one world, where life in the other vaults is a lot more harrowing. Again, all kind of set up for season 2. But yeah, certainly the running and jumping and shooting storyline I thought was much less interesting than what on earth is sort of going on between those other vaults.
And that makes sense. I mean, can you think about Westworld? I watched that, and that had that definite layer. That was almost a bit like The Wire, in the sense of every episode, you seemingly get a bit more of the universe unpacked around you, and so you get to see what's going on. So yeah, hopefully in season 2, we get to see more of that. What type of thing would you hope to see touched upon, that maybe, or sort of tropes touched upon, that weren't necessarily raised in this series, but you think there'd be good value there in terms of them dealing with that?
I mean, I think that there's got to be some maniac religious outfit out there. I mean, we've got the knights, and they're kind of doing their thing, and I'm not necessarily sure where they get all the food to be able to sustain themselves. But anyway, that's another sort of pet hate of mine. But yeah, I mean, the whole, I really couldn't buy into the Vault sort of story. The reason that Vault Tech has done this is somehow to be able to create demand, because
it's quite short-sighted.
Yeah, with the complete collapse of society, what are you going to do with all these dollars or gold or whatever if you can't buy anything with it? When you sort of deal with sort of nuclear fiction generally, it all tends to get a little bit sort of messianic. So I'm sort of hoping that there's going to be something sort of behind it that's going to be driving that. A secret subset of the Vault Tech people that are whatever crazy religion that they've got to be able to usher in the end times, because again that Vault Tech sort of plotline was just weird.
Maybe we'll get backstory, and maybe they expect like a little nuclear war, just enough to spook the fishes. Maybe that was part of the rationale, because it hasn't played out that way. I think it's fair to say.
And apparently they were running out of uranium.
Well, I mean, there we go.
Who knows how much uranium is out there? But apparently, in sort of the Vault Tech world, they did. So the whole sort of idea of, and again, I think that's a sort of another interesting sort of trope that they don't actually bother dealing with. Is that again within that sort of that nuclear fiction, there's that whole idea that we won't see destruction, if you like, of the world. That what we will see is an irradiation of it. So that fundamentally these will be significant sort of RDDs that will kill all biological life, but sort of allow the infrastructure to be able to survive. And you see that in sort of apocalypse films like sort of I Am Legend and some of the others. And they didn't go that way. They wanted to be able to sort of go with the complete desolation. However, to have lots of sand, I mean, presumably that's sort of cheaper and it's easier on the cast. The lots of nuclear winter and areas of again otherwise sort of urban decay. So yeah, I thought that that need to be able to sort of propagate certain aesthetic elements. Obviously, it gets it from the game, but it probably fits into a certain amount of budgetary issues for the show as well.
And it's a strange one because it's obviously a sci-fi, and so. What I found interesting was you're watching it almost like the surrealism of the computer game. So it made me think about some of the other films I'd seen over the years, and I guess maybe we can talk about it a little bit. So for you, I guess, did watching this make you think about rewatching some of the previous nuclear apocalypse films? And do you think you get the same out of them, or is it something else we get from particularly the darker ones that we kind of have watched over the decades?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the stories that we tell ourselves. So when you go through that sort of 1980s fiction, so things like sort of Ridley Walker or Canticle for Leibowitz, I mean, they're fairly stark. It's not an area that you'd want to actually visit in real life. Well, Fallout, fundamentally, you know, I might be happy to go there for a sort of a long weekend. Maybe I wouldn't want to live there the whole time. So we seem to sort of like this narrative, possibly because until very, very recently, it's always been in the past that there is a way to be able to survive nuclear Armageddon, that it won't be the just ongoing horribleness of threats. Because again, that all of those fiction came out of the, if not the CND movement, then the kind of things that CND was talking about. And since we've lost that sort of almost political sort of driving force that then appears in the fiction, we now end up with almost nuclear light.
Yes.
And I think that's sort of perhaps, yeah, again, it's not just in the sort of the nuclear, it's in all of those sort of apocalyptic survival films. You know, one man and his dog, and dogs obviously have a big part to play in a lot of those sort of ones, are able to somehow get through it. I mean, the one that I saw recently that I enjoyed was the Tom Hanks film Fitch, which again dealt with presumably a sort of a nuclear apocalypse in a very different way.
And of course, I mean, the thing that this did speak to, I guess, is some of the times is survivorism and prepperism was definitely a theme there. This idea of the individual. Of course, you had the communities, but much of the story really was about the individual finding a way to survive and trying to keep true to themselves and having almost a spiritual experience throughout the film as they discover the depths of struggle, but come out of it as these, often some of them very likable characters. And so I found that quite interesting. This idea of the prep side of it, which some people are already into at the moment, but also the individuals kind of trying to build out their own life in this environment. As you get, nuclear light perhaps is one way of putting it.
But I mean, again, it'll be interesting to see a sort of almost a film told from a non-primary sort of country. I mean, going back a bit to Neville Shoots on the Beach, where there's two countries almost off stage are getting into some sort of nuclear sort of set too, even though the country that you belong to has no role in this. The inevitable fallout, the inevitable nuclear winter, the collapse of the sort of the whole ecosystem. I mean, again, you start to look at some of the papers on that, and it was far more likely that more people would die from the resulting sort of worldwide famine that would happen than from actually the blast itself. So again, because certainly, and I think it's a little bit Anglo-centric, because we tend to like to write stories that we have a motive force in. We're fighting on the side for the goodies against the sort of the baddies. So there's a desire to be able to save ourselves for the inevitable war that happens when we all come out of our Doctor Strangelove-esque sort of catacombs. That we going to be able to continue the conflict, as opposed to being a passive, almost recipient of whatever horribleness has sort of gone on, and feeling perhaps a bit sort of slighted and irritated that these other countries have entirely destroyed you.
Of course, it's interesting you mentioned On the Beach in Neville Shore. I think it was 1957. That book, it was post-nuclear exchange, but it was about waiting for the inevitable. It was about the oncoming radiation levels in Australia. And that story, of course, was harrowing in a sense of people trying to continue their lives in a normal way, knowing that it wouldn't be long before it was the end of everything. And that was a very different feel. That still had that sort of sense of doom, because it was foreboding things were going to happen. Whereas the series was very much the tapestry of communities surviving and fighting in that post-world. They were very much in the now.
Well, I mean, I'd recommend as an interesting read, which ties into that sort of whole sort of Vault-Tec. It's a book called Level 7 by Mordecai Rochefeld, and it's about individuals sort of in a vault, watching and waiting and monitoring the radiation creeping closer and closer and closer towards him. And spoilers, right at the end, he's keeping his diary, and because of that, you always believe that he's somehow going to get out, because otherwise, how would the diary ever be sort of appear to be presented to you, the reader? And it turns out that it's come from sort of a whole load of aliens that have landed, and they've been really interested in sort of what happened here. So they pick it up from him. So again, that's a very it's a certainly sort of, that's a 1959 book. It's certainly a far more bleak depiction of prepperism and what we see in sort of Vault-Tec than sort of that we get in this sort of the 80s and the 90s, where if you prepare really hard, you can get through it.
Well, I think we've done a good job there in covering that and giving some people some breadcrumbs to find their way to some other literature out there. It's a huge genre of literature, and I think people read it for lots of different reasons. And as you say, I think some of these historically have been written to communicate a very important message and to warn people. This one feels almost as if the nuclear exchange is a kind of device to set up the environment for the game, really. And that's how it's kind of, and that does come through in the film, I guess, in the series, sorry. But yeah, so thanks very much for making the time to speak to me today. I've enjoyed wandering around. Enjoyed's probably the wrong word. Not your company, of course, but it's easy to forget the nature of what we're kind of talking about here. But I think I've found that very interesting. So thanks very much for making the time to speak to me today.
Well, watch out for those gulpers.
Always.
Yeah, just make them sick, and you're away.
That's the Gwyn Winfield defensive line. You can trust there.
That's my Cooperism thumbs up. Carry some.